Welcome to the Money Tree Real Estate Investor Podcast, where we learn from real estate professionals across the industry. They will share about how they got into real estate, the big wins they have celebrated, the mistakes they have made along the way, and the advice they have for anyone following in their footsteps. Money really does grow on trees. Hey everybody, it's William Holland here for another episode of the Money Tree Real Estate Investor Podcast. I've got a special guest here today, Michael Piehler. I've got to meet you in person and really enjoyed getting to know you better, man. Great to have you on today.
Hey, William, pleasure being on here. I appreciate it. Yeah, great to meet you in person as well. I'm excited to have a little conversation here.
Yes, sir. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. So where did you grow up and where you are now and why did you end up there?
Yeah, so grew up, I'm a Texas boy like yourself. Grew up in North Dallas and Plano. So, grew up around a lot of real estate and saw the big, expansions that was happening in the DFW area. And I was not really paying attention much to it growing up. I was just more focused on sports. I played pretty much like every single sport there is, but really focused on ice hockey and golf. Played ice hockey at a decently high level, and that's what brought me up to Minnesota. So I'm now reside in the Twin Cities. I went to Bethel University, which is a small private school just north of St. Paul. Played hockey and golf there, and that's what brought me up to the north and met my wife at school, and so we're sticking around. She's from the area, but yeah. So I was a economics and finance major in school, and kind of at a certain point, I don't know who it was, but I was exposed to some of these real estate podcasts and just kind of learning online that these huge assets, cash flowing assets that we see all around us, like everyday people like you and I actually own those. And that just kind of blew my mind. And so I wanted to be involved in that. So got my real estate license, and that's kind of what I thought the progression was, and quickly realized I don't want to be a salesperson, real estate sales, and really like the relationship side of the investing aspect of real estate, and just started to get as many mentors around me as I could, and was fortunate that actually my finance professor is a very successful owner operator himself, has close to 4,000 units across the country. And so he kind of took me under his wings while I was in school and introduced me to a lot of people in the space, and was fortunate to as soon as graduated, just started our company, North Lone Star Capital, and hit the ground running.
So you started it with your professor?
No, I wish. No, I started my business partner, Gavin Hart. He had his stories, kind of businessman, entrepreneur, had a bunch of single family rentals, was ready to scale up into multifamily, had the resources, but didn't have the time. I had all the time in the world, just graduated, but I didn't have any money. So we paired up perfectly together, and we partnered up.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think that's really neat that you had somebody in academia that actually had some real world experience. I feel like that's not very common.
No, not at all. Yeah, super. It's actually kind of funny. He drives he's got a yellow convertible Porsche. And I knew something was up because no professor's salary is that good at the school I went to. So I knew because he would talk about real estate, and figured that kind of, he was pretty successful at it. So then once we started to dive further into it, yeah, just him being an owner operator, syndicator, was super helpful for me at a younger, I don't know, I think I was a junior in college when I really started to dive into it, and super helpful to have a mentor like him, because that type of stuff, like it's invaluable, just like having those one-on-one conversations and actually learning from someone who's doing it firsthand. Like you can't learn that in a book.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I think that, sets somebody like you apart. And the reason that I hate the term self-made man or self-made woman, I'm like, what does that even mean? Because to get anywhere, like you have to find people that can mentor you and guide you. And at the very least, you have to find partners to grow beyond a certain point.
100%. And I definitely think like the syndication space is very collaborative. It's not necessarily, it is competitive, but it's more so collaborative, and you have to be a team player to be successful in the private equity real estate investing space. I also had a mentor who's a industrial sales broker here in the Twin Cities. Kind of took me under his wing for a couple of years as well, and was great, and really enjoyed like what he had to teach me as well. But I also um, didn't. I guess there was a side of that I didn't really like, the competitive. I mean, I'm a competitive person. I played I played all this,
Actually,
I played hockey and stuff, so I understand the competitive aspect of both. But I just enjoyed that. It felt more like a win-win, honestly, when you're providing, you know, a passive investment to your investors as well as your company, creating more cash flow. And it just, to me, it felt more natural, more like you're actually helping more people than just yourself with brokers. Nothing against brokers. I love brokers.
you got to.
but
You gotta have that.
I was just more attracted to the investing side of it.
Absolutely, and I like that you said that it's a collaborative space rather more so than a competitive space. So I got to sit in a like a meetup, in-person meetup here in Dallas, probably 6 months ago with some people that you and I actually know mutually. And one of the things that they said, they had a broker actually get up and speak. You know, they had a property management guy, a broker, very successful, one of the best brokers in Dallas area. And, you know, one of his bits of advice was, hey, like if you didn't win the deal, like you should still be calling me and asking me who won the deal. And then you should be calling the person that won the deal and trying to figure out, you know, how did they make the numbers work? Like, why did they win the deal? You know, and somebody actually did that, and the game plan for the person that underwrote it successfully and acquired the property, they were deciding to tear down walls between one unit spaces, or you know, one door, one bedroom
Hmm.
spaces, and make them convert them into two bedroom spaces. You know, and that was not a play that most people would have seen. So there's that potential. You know, that was a connection that they made. And there's certainly potential in the future for those two teams to partner on a deal rather than compete together, you know?
Yeah, yeah. That's really cool. No, that's really good advice. Like it doesn't hurt. It would never hurt. Like the worst that somebody's gonna say if you reach out is they're just gonna say no or not answer. And honestly, like that's not that bad.
Right.
So like the risk reward like ratio for just reaching out and trying to have a conversation with other operators or successful, like even if they're way farther ahead than you, like yeah, like the worst they're going to say is no. So I would highly encourage anybody listening, like absolutely don't feel like you're doing someone a disservice by trying to have a cup of coffee with them. Like that is 100% how businesses are made in this space, and how deals are formed. Most operators didn't start with 1,000 units under management. Like at some point they were at ground zero too, and they had this similar conversations. So I feel like most people in this space like to give back and have those conversations in those meetings. And yeah, I've enjoyed it, and that's kind of, I think you would say the same, and it's one of the benefits of being in this space.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you've got a deal that you've been working on for a while. So I'd like to do a deep dive of that deal if you feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the deal's in Rochester, Minnesota. Quick little background on how we acquired it. We were previously under another deal under contract in Rochester, Minnesota, and we're conducting due diligence and discovered. So we thought the roofs had all been replaced within the last 10 years. During due diligence, we discovered that that was absolutely not the case. All 10 buildings needed to have full roof replacements. And yes, our the cheapest bid we had was close to $1 million to replace everything, which we did not have filled out in our capex budget. Sellers, unique situation, weren't able to come down in price in a market where it seemed like everybody was being able to retrade. We weren't able to, so we basically had to back out and lose. Like we could have closed on it, but it's just our returns wouldn't have been as good for our investors, and there's more risk because we don't know what's underneath, how much rotten wood is underneath the roofs once we started actually doing the work. So it was too risky for us. We backed out, lost a lot of pursuit capital during that, but felt like it was, the best move for our investors to not go forward. Thankfully, through that process, we ended up, actually, we were touring the property we're now under contract. Looked like a great deal. I literally just gave the owner, I cold called him, and he was interested in selling. So we ended up getting under contract on this one. It's a 72 unit in Rochester, Minnesota. The big economic driver in Rochester is the Mayo Clinics. They employ like 35,000 um, workers, and they're expanding. There's a multi-billion dollar movement going on over the next 10 years of just capital that's going to be infused into the Rochester Mayo Clinics, just expanding that area and services. So really good core economic metrics for the demographics, I guess. The property itself is a 1992 build, tall pitch roofs, no issues there. We can verify they've been replaced the last 5 years, so no issues there. We've finished due diligence, and now we're just waiting to finish the capital raise and loan assumption. So yes, there's a loan assumption on it right now, which is huge because if we had to purchase it, it wouldn't qualify, or if we had to originate new debt, it wouldn't qualify for a Fannie Freddie product because the occupancy is too low. So we would have to go the bridge debt route, and we'd be looking like 9.5%. Whereas this has 2 years left at 4.69%, which is just huge. Really, really helps cash flow the first couple of years, and then we'll refinance into hopefully a stabilized asset by then and a Fannie Freddie product going forward.
Definitely, yeah. So you touched on so many different things, and I hope I hit all of them. So the first question that I have, what you were under the impression on the first deal that didn't close that the roofs had been replaced recently. Were you under that impression because the seller had told you that, or where did you kind of get that
Yeah.
idea?
Yeah. So yes. So one of the issues with this property is that, or that other one is that the sellers were out of state. And I would argue and bet, I'm not a betting man, but I'd bet that they
Mhm.
had never stepped foot on that property and never had seen it. So what they were telling us was just what their property management company was telling them. They had actually
Oh,
never seen the property. Um, One of the roofs had been replaced within the last 10 years, not all of them. And even that one had still had issues. So they were, I don't know if they were just being, negligent or they genuinely thought they were all replaced. But yeah, part of due diligence items, we requested receipts from the roof that was replaced, but we didn't get it. So by the time we actually got on site and could see and got up on the roofs, yeah, knew it was an issue. And that was something. So we're in Minnesota, so there's snow all over the
harsh
roofs, and we
winters.
yeah, harsh winters. We couldn't really see. They were flat roofs, so we couldn't really see just from the walkthrough. So it wasn't until we actually got on site during due diligence that we were able to discover the condition of the roofs, which was just unfortunate and something that I've learned to to focus on. If there are flat roofs, they can be very expensive to replace, and that's something we're trying to avoid now or verify beforehand that they are in good shape.
Definitely, yeah. So that praise God for due diligence, right?
Yeah. Oh
You know
man.
what if you had just gone in on that deal without having to do that or
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Like there would have been, I think we had around 100,000 built in just in contingency for the roofs because we thought, they're older. But then $1 million, that's $900,000 that we wouldn't have been prepared to spend. So investors' returns would have just really hurt. And who knows, it could have been more expensive than that once we actually started, exposing the roofs and peeling it back and seeing what we were actually dealing with. So for the betterment of the investors, yeah, it made more sense to just to walk away and kind of take that hit.
Definitely, yeah. So the hit that was taken that you just mentioned was earnest money deposit. So hard money.
We so yeah, so no, we got our earnest money back, but
Okay,
yeah, so
good.
we
Good.
backed out before end of due diligence. So we got our earnest money back. However, pursuit costs, attorneys, our travel expenses, and then the due diligence, the property management company we hired to do due diligence. It's very thorough, so it's expensive. However, it's worth it because they discover stuff like this. So like all that was just out of pocket.
Right. And so basically I'd like to just help educate the listeners for those who haven't been active on real estate. So that is a big differentiating factor between passive investors and the general partnership team. So passive investors, they give money into a deal after it's under contract. and were it not to close, they would receive their money back. But that is one of the risks that the general partnership team takes in acquisition. They're going to be spending money doing due diligence. They're going to be spending a lot of time. They're going to be traveling to the property and making a lot of phone calls and getting ready for a business plan to be put into place. And so that is, we are rewarded, when a property is operated successfully and sold, but we also take a lot more risk. So that's something to think about as you are deciding if you want to be more of a passive investor or active investor in real estate.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think a lot of limited partners, a lot of passive investors understand the amount of work that goes into just one deal. Like 18% ARR, 7% cash on cash. That's that's not on every single property we underwrite. It's very hard to find those deals. So not even mentioning, so yes, there's pursuit costs, but then there's also the the time that you're not going to get back. Like we spent almost 3 months on that deal, and our investors didn't spend any time on it. We didn't even open up the raise yet because we
Right.
weren't sure if it was ready
Exactly.
to go. So that's something that they didn't have to, like, out of sight, out of mind. They have no idea about that. And that's something that's kind of the benefit of being a passive investor, as long as you're working with good operators that actually are going to to take those steps to make sure it is a solid investment. Hopefully they've spent the time and spent the money to ensure that it is a good investment. And that's something that's one of the huge benefits of being a passive investor. If you don't have the time or the money to do what we're doing, you still get to partner with and piggyback on our expertise, our time, our money and experience, and joint join partners and invest passively in these deals.
Absolutely. And I think that's a testament to just your honesty and your partnership team's honesty and desire to put the investors first. Because you guys did have sunk cost. You did lose some time and you lost some money in that deal that you did not end up closing on. But you were looking at the long term and trying to look out for your investors. So that adds a lot of integrity to somebody that like you that's willing to step away from a bad deal.
Hmm. Yeah, it would have been tougher if we didn't get this one out of it, because I'm kind of seeing the silver lining as, without that process, we wouldn't have now been under contract on this deal, which is even better. It's a 1992 build. The other one was a 77 build, and just better bones, like super solid deal, true B class property. And unfortunately, we had to go through that, but it's worth it because this is much better.
Passive investors in real estate are able to receive a check every month. Some people call that mailbox money. We say money really does grow on trees. Visit the website at biggerpictureholdings.com, where we have a ton of free resources to help you learn more about planting your very own money tree.
So a new topic that you talked about was loan assumption for this deal that you are acquiring now. So tell us about what that means and what does that look like?
Yeah, so there's the previous owner, their debt piece is assumable. So we'll be taking it over. Our One of our partners has a really strong track record and balance sheet, and so he's kind of who the bank is going to be looking at when determining if we'll qualify or not for the loan. And we will with that, and so it'll be able to be assumed over or assigned to us at closing. So we'll be taking that debt piece. So one thing that we were interested about and weren't aware, because this was our first time using assumable debt, was will the full balance, which was about 3.9 million, be awarded to us even though the current debt coverage ratio is less than 1. So they're literally losing money on the property. It's negative cash flowing because it's being operated so poorly. And so we weren't sure if we were going to be able to receive the full loan amount. And through this process, yes, we've learned we will. It's just that we're going to have reserves for our first year payments in an account, which is totally fine. And we have already accounted for that in our underwriting, and it's actually hedges risk a little bit. We've already got first year payments sitting in a reserves account when the deal is going to be cash tight the first few months, trying to put in better management and really operate the property and get actually cash flow positive. So that's actually a benefit.
I would like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for investors kind of worrying about how are you going to take a property that's losing cash flow and then pay for your debt payments? Well, it's already been raised. And then also the current operators are just doing a really poor job, unfortunately. And the current residents are just taking the brunt of their negligence, I would say. There's really no security on the property, no maintenance. Like the maintenance has not been fixing any issues. We walked all 72 units. They're currently mini units where the locks don't work. The interiors, there's issues with one of the units, or actually 8 of the units. There's zero flooring. There's no carpet. It's just cement in their house. People are just living on cement because there was a flood in one of the units and they never fixed it. It's been like that for 3 months. So just really bad operations in a property that's, quite frankly, like in a really good area and has really good bones. So we'll be taking advantage of the current operators' poor management.
Man, that's crazy. I'm excited and glad that somebody like you are going to be able to take the property over and help improve the residents' lives.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, absolutely. It was actually like that was my first time seeing a property that rough for the area. Like it's really not a bad area. And just kind of walking in and seeing, like, these are their homes. Like this is where they're living. This is what they call their home, and just kind of seeing the condition of some of those units was rough, and it definitely fired me up and got me excited to be able to provide, a better, safe, clean living environment to those residents.
Most definitely, man. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for talking about that deal. Super excited for you and your team. I'd like to close out with 2 final topics. So one would be a lesson learned, something that you would caution potential passive investors on, or maybe something that you've wish you would have done differently so far in real estate, or you can hit on all 3.
Yeah, I'll go. A lesson I've learned, and this would be for your active investors out there, to not be afraid to pick up the phone and make those calls. That owner I cold called and we ended up getting under contract on, I had his number in a list 3-4 months ago, and I never called him. And maybe we wouldn't have gone through that initial process if I had just called him earlier and we ended up getting under contract. So it's always tough. I always struggle with it, but I think not being afraid to put yourself out there and make those calls and make those introductions is something like that I've learned to kind of get over and just go after it.
Definitely, yeah. No, that's such good advice. Lastly, I would love to just shine the spotlight on you and just hype you up, just hear what your most proud or proudest accomplishment so far in real estate, and maybe something that you're looking forward to in the future.
Yeah, appreciate it. So our first deal we closed on as a new company was last year. It was 128 unit in Houston. That was awesome. That was, that's for so far the biggest accomplishment we've had. And then I think this one, once we close on it, will be my favorite just because of the circumstances around it and just the way we went from from 0 to, I guess, 0 to 100, from thinking we lost out on all of our pursuit costs. All of a sudden it ended up being a better situation. I think this will be the most unique and fun and satisfying deal that I would have had.
Absolutely. So how can people get in contact with you, man?
Yeah, if they go to our website, northlonestar.com, you can subscribe to our investor portal or shoot us a message on there. Happy to connect if you guys have any questions or want to learn more about our investment strategy and thesis and all that good stuff.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you, William. Good talking.
Like and subscribe below. A new episode will air every Tuesday at 7 a.m. Are you looking for more content? Visit our website, biggerpictureholdings.com. And remember, money really does grow on trees.